I don't think I've ever felt so much peace and joy, just knowing what I was created to be.
I wake up and I look and I see, wow, another beautiful day, and I try to do my best every day.
Just 15 years ago, Ruth Strimling and Acacio Veladis Vieira were waiting to die.
Yeah, didn't care. Didn't want, in fact, I didn't really mind if this was how I was going to die.
I was like sick, thin, beard, like finished.
Acacio was in an Angolan jail suffering from heroin withdrawal symptoms.
So they would just beat me up, that I would pee in my pants. It was like terrifying. I used to cry and beg them, please, please, please don't do that.
And Ruth was found in her Melville, Johannesburg flat with a needle sticking out of her groin.
At that time, I was completely broken and smashed. I was using every day.
Acacio fled from Portugal to Angola when he was 17, and Ruth, one of a twin, was an art director in the film industry. Acacio and Ruth grew up thousands of kilometers apart, but shared a similar story.
My father was also involved with drugs and alcohol, and he committed suicide.
I was about 12 years old when I started experimenting with the other boys in school.
My first drug was cocaine. Then I went on to crack cocaine, then onto a drug that almost destroyed me.
When I was 14, I was already spiking heroin, and I was a complete, full-blown heroin addict.
I watched them injecting Welcanol one day, and I just said, can I try this? And they said, please don't. You know, once you try this, there's no going back. And I was up for anything at that stage. I said, no, come on, guys. So I shot up, and from there there was no other drug that I really wanted after that.
One morning I was asleep and my mother came to my room, and she actually got the courage of just pushing my sleeve away, and she just saw all those like spiking tracks, and she freaked out.
I always felt lonely and rejected. So I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to live like that.
By November 1996, Ruth's addiction was out of control. She'd been to almost every rehab in the country, and her twin sister Anne was now desperate. So with a bottle of vodka as a bribe, Ruth was put on a bus and sent to Noupoort. Clutching a small suitcase and an empty bottle of vodka, she arrived at the Noupoort Christian Care Centre. Pastor Edward Dry was there to meet her.
Smashed out of her mind, idling very well on the vodka.
What was it like when you first got there?
Well, it was tough. It was hard. Nobody was listening to my little sob stories.
And she started fluking me out.
They weren't interested in what I was, how many degrees I had. They just said, you're a drug addict and you need help.
Acacio was running out of options. Returning to Portugal could mean returning to a life of crime and possible imprisonment.
And I told my mother, I'm here, I'm broken, I came out of jail, but another 2 or 3 days I'm gonna steal the video machine, and I told her, I'm finished. And my mother came and she had the forms for Noupoort Christian Care Centre. And I said to my mother, okay, I'll go. She couldn't believe the change. I said, no, I'll go. It was like being in complete darkness. And all of a sudden, that name, that word Christian, just light, a light at the end of the tunnel.
I can see it makes you very emotional still.
Yeah, because it saved my life. Just that.
Acacio left Angola with a glimmer of hope and arrived at Noupoort, where Ruth was still struggling to come to terms with her incarceration.
Then I had a turning point in my recovery. I experienced something that I'd never known before. So that was God. He became the father of me who was fatherless.
Noupoort has received a fair amount of attention on Carte Blanche. We've mostly reported on excessive and often controversial methods of therapy in this Karoo-based rehabilitation centre. What was your experience of that rehabilitation centre?
I was there 14 years ago. When came that controversy, I wasn't there anymore. So I can't really testify about that. That's where I found the Lord. I learned a lot of discipline, and gave me what I needed at that time.
Smash it now. Do it.
Head of Nopoort, Pastor Sophos' methods were often questioned, but Ruth and Acacio had been through a different type of hell, and Nopoort worked for them. Acacio farmed while Ruth used her teaching qualification to start a school. It was during this time that they met. Was it love at first sight?
No.
Not at all.
In fact, I went to her and I told her, you know what, Ruth, you're going to be my wife. She said, what are you talking about? I said, no, I know that.
Yeah, it was just somebody that I met and who really had the same passion and the same vision as I had.
She's honest and she's like completely like transparent. She's beautiful.
Romance, drug-free sounds like the perfect ending to a fairy tale come true. But this story had only just begun. They shared a vision to help other addicts, and Mozambique, with an immense drug problem and strong Portuguese culture, was the obvious choice. July 2000, Acacio had never been to Maputo before, but he had an overwhelming desire to cross over to Carte.
It was on this ferry crossing over to Carte that Acacio's prayers were answered.
By chance, he met some businessmen who had property a short distance away in Bella Vista. They needed someone to look after the land, and Acacio seized the opportunity. In a matter of hours, he'd secured a place for the rehab.
So how did you feel about that?
I knew that was like some supernatural intervention and that I was in the right track and just give me the hope that I needed.
Bella Vista is a remote rural area about an hour's drive south of the ferry.
Acacio arrived here in Bella Vista and realized there was still a lot that needed to be done.
What was there when you arrived?
A shell of a house with goats inside, no roof, no windows, burnt.
And that didn't daunt you?
It was great, it was a house.
Acacio pitched a tent and started scraping together materials that he could use to start building the centre.
So how did you introduce this concept now to your new wife?
I'm sure it was a bit of a shock. It was a shock.
I don't think words can describe, any word can describe how I felt. No water, no electricity. That's it. He presented to me, my love, this is where we will be living.
It was also her heart. It was not just my vision, it was her vision.
The small piece of land packed a powerful punch. Droughts, floods, malaria, roads that would destroy almost any car, and even the wildlife posed a threat. What kind of challenges were you faced with starting your own rehabilitation centre?
I was the only woman around. I had to bathe in a bucket of green, slimy water, making a fire every day. So the day-to-day was hunting and gathering.
With the arrival of the first addict, so the dream started to take shape, and Healing Wings became a reality. As the numbers grew from 2 to 3, then 5, so the centre also grew, and in just a couple of years, it was a fully fledged facility.
This was to be no ordinary rehabilitation centre. Right from the beginning, Acacio and Ruth wanted to create very real benefits for the local community.
Recovering addicts visit the local hospital and do what they can to make the patients more comfortable. They also help at the Bella Vista jail, where they hand out food and clothing. This serves as a harsh reality check. Acacio has initiated a rice and agriculture project which not only improves the lives of the local community, but also works as physical therapy for the recovering addicts. At the Mama Madada Community Project, local women have combined their talents with the recovering addicts and manufacture merchandise that's now being sold in most major tourist shops. Healing Wings runs a school for the local kids and are opening a home for orphan children. Ruth and Acacio's faith turned their lives around, but is looking towards the heavens the only answer?
It's not just, I found God and now everything's okay. On the contrary, you're going to still have your struggles. You're still going to have the adversities. No one's exempt from life's difficulties.
Does one have to be a Christian to be at your rehab?
We do make it clear that it's a faith-based recovery program, but we don't discriminate or prohibit anyone from coming here, because ultimately what we're doing is recovery.
What started as a dream, a dilapidated shed and a couple of addicts, is now an established drug rehabilitation centre with a primary care facility in South Africa. Ruth and Acacio have realised their vision of healing other broken souls.
It's always hope. The game is never over until the game is over. And if there is a little bit of life breathing in anyone, there is a way.